This short clip is one of a series of clips you'll be watching over this topic about financial maths in Year 8. This one's about calculating the GST. When you go shopping and purchase an item, you must pay the GST on that item. The GST in Australia stands for the Goods and Services Tax. There are, of course, some items which are exempt from GST. They include fresh food, some costs involved with your education, and medical costs. Now, the GST is collected by the vendor at the point of sale, and he or she must pass it on to the government. In Australia, to calculate the amount of GST on a certain item, we simply find 10% of the initial price of that item. Our first example involves a mobile phone. Now, it has a pre-GST price of $179.50. You're asked to calculate the GST payable on this phone. Now, the GST in Australia, as said before, is 10%. So to calculate the GST, which you need to pay on this phone, it's a case of calculating 10% of $179.50. So 10, shift, left bracket, that brings up the percent, and we multiply that by $179.50. Include the last zero, press your equals, and you get an answer of $17.95. So the GST on this mobile phone is $17.95. Now we move on to calculating the final price of an item. So when you calculate the amount needed to require the entire item, you need to add the GST to the pre-tax price. Now, the quickest and easiest way to do this, and you would have done this before, when you increased an amount by 10%. So we increased the 100% of the item by 10%. Therefore, we come up with 110% of the pre-tax price. So basically what we need to do is we find 110% of the pre-tax price, and that gives us the amount of the item after the GST has been applied. So to do that, we simply multiply the pre-tax price by 110%. Now, example 2. David's family take him out for his 14th birthday. They take him to his favourite restaurant. Now, the family enjoyed a lovely meal and finished off with a cake for dessert. Now, the cost of the meal for the family of 4 came to $245.60 before tax. The question asks us, how much does a family pay after the GST is added? Well, to do this calculation, we need to find 110% of $245.60. So 110, shift left bracket to find the percent, then times $245.60, put the extra zero in, equals, and we find that the parents had to pay, well, hopefully the parents paid, $270.16 for the meal. So that's the amount after the GST has been added. Our third example. When you go to the Peter Wynn Score Sport, Parramatta there, a Manchester United jersey costs $114.90 before GST is added. Okay, we need to find the cost of the jersey after the GST has in fact been added. So once again, we find 110% of $114.90. So 110, shift left bracket, times, and we have $114.90. So after we apply the GST, the cost of the Man U jersey will be $126.39. Now, there are going to be some questions where they ask us to find the pre-tax price of an item. So when we're given the final cost of the item, which includes the GST, to do that calculation of the pre-tax cost, we simply reverse the process we've been doing. We have been multiplying by 110%. We reverse that. So in order to find the pre-tax price, we simply divide by 110%. That will find the cost before the GST was applied. So an example of these type of questions might be, calculate the pre-tax price of a Toyota Yaris that costs $24,990, including the GST. So that cost has been calculated after GST has already been added. So what we need to do here is we need to find the pre-tax price by dividing by 110%. So in our calculator, 24,990, and we divide this time by 110%. 110, shift left bracket, that's 110%. So 24,990 divided by 110%, and we find the cost of the Yaris before the tax was applied was $22,718.18. Let's round off to the nearest cent. That's 18 cents. We ignore those if we round off to the nearest cent. Okay, I want you to pause the clip here. I want you to have a go at answering these three questions. The first one, calculate the GST on a book that is a pre-tax price of $17.80. Number two, calculate the total cost of a CD that cost $26.35 pre-tax, so you need to find the cost after the GST. And then number three is a question where Joseph and Stephen were charged a total of $17.90 for their meal at McDonald's. I want you to find or calculate the actual price of their junk food before the GST was added. So make sure you pause and answer those three questions. Right, here are three answers to those three questions. Make sure you've attempted the questions before you get onto this stage. If not, I want you to go back. Okay, the first one, calculate the GST on a book that is a pre-tax price of $17.80. The GST is 10%, so it's 10, shift left bracket, 10%, and we simply times that by $17.80. We find the GST which would apply would be $1.78. So, question one answer, $1.78. Question two, calculate the total cost of a CD that costs $26.35 pre-tax. So we're finding the total cost, we're multiplying by 110%. So 110, shift left bracket, gets us 110%, and we times that by $26.35. Press our equals, and we get an answer of $28.985. Now this is a tough one. Now we round up this time, so the cost of this CD will be $28.99. We round up. 5 or above, we round up. $28.99. Now the third one, if this was the cost of their meal after the GST has been added, I don't know why they're eating McDonald's anyway, all right, so we divide by 117%. So $17.90, and we divide by 110%. The cost before the GST has been applied would have been $16.27. Okay, that concludes this little clip about the GST. Keep in mind, in other countries it's called different names. It's called the VAT in some countries, the value added tax. In Australia we call it the goods and services tax. At the moment it's 10%. There have been some push to maybe push it to 12.5 or 15%, but that will take a fair bit of doing before it actually happens. So, I'm sure your teacher now will be able to give you some questions in class. Hopefully you've understood. Go back and look at some of the examples and all the questions before we go to your next class. Thank you very much.